Napoleon's position on horseback, by adding height to his figure, supplied all that was wanting to make me think him the most majestic person I had ever seen. His dress was green and covered with orders, and his saddle and housings were of crimson velvet, richly embroidered with gold. He alighted at our house, and we all moved to the entrance to receive him. Sir George Cockburn introduced us to him. On a nearer approach, Napoleon, contrasting, as his shorter figure did, with the noble height and aristocratic bearing of Sir George Cockburn, lost something of the dignity which had so much struck me on first seeing him. He was deadly pale, and I thought his features, though cold and immovable and somewhat stern, were exceedingly beautiful. He seated himself on one of our cottage chairs, and after scanning our little apartment with his eagle glance, he complimented Mama on the pretty situation of the Briars. When once he began to speak, his fascinating smile and kind manner removed every vestige of the fear with which I had hitherto regarded him. While he was talking to Mama, I had an opportunity of scrutinizing his features, which I did with the keenest interest, and certainly I have never seen anyone with so remarkable and striking a physiognomy. The portraits of him give a good general idea of his features, but his smile and the expression of his eyes could not be transmitted to canvas, and these constituted Napoleon's chief charm. His hair was dark brown and as fine and silky as a child's, rather too much so, indeed, for a man, as its very softness caused it to look thin. His teeth were even, but rather dark, and I afterwards found that this arose from his constant habit of eating licorice, of which he always kept a supply in his waistcoat pocket. The emperor appeared much pleased with the Briars and expressed a wish to remain there. My father had offered Sir George Cockburn apartments at the cottage, and he immediately assured us of his willingness to resign them to General Bonaparte, as the situation appeared to please him so much, and it was arranged, much apparently to Napoleon's satisfaction, that he could be our guest until his residence at Longwood were fit to receive him. Our family at the time of the emperor's arrival consisted of my father, my mother, my elder sister, myself, and my two brothers, who were quite children. Napoleon determined on not going down to the town again, and wished his rooms to be got ready for him immediately. Some chairs were then brought out at his request upon the lawn, and seating himself on one, he desired me to take another, which I did with a beating heart. He then said, "You speak French?" I replied that I did, and he asked me who had taught me. I informed him, and he put several questions to me about my studies, and more particularly concerning geography. He inquired the capitals of the different countries of Europe. What is the capital of France? Paris. Of Italy? Rome. Of Russia? Petersburg now, I replied. Moscow formerly. On my saying this, he turned abruptly round, and fixing his piercing eyes full in my face, he demanded sternly, "Who burned it?" When I saw the expression of his eye and heard his changed voice, all my former terror of him returned, and I was unable to utter a syllable. I had often heard the burning of Moscow talked of, and had been present at discussions as to whether the French or Russians were the author of that dreadful conflagration. I therefore feared to offend him by alluding to it. He repeated the question, and I stammered, "I do not know, sir." "Oui, oui," he replied, laughing violently. "Vous savez très bien. C'est moi qui le prenais." "You know very well. It was me that burned it." On seeing him laugh, I gained a little courage and said, "I believe, sir, the Russians burned it to get rid of the French." He again laughed and seemed pleased to find that I knew anything about the matter. The arrangements made for him were necessarily most hurried, and while we were endeavoring to complete them in the way we thought most likely to contribute to his comfort, he amused himself by walking about the grounds and garden. In the evening he came into the house, and as my father and mother spoke French with difficulty, that language being then much less studied in England than it is at present, he addressed himself again to me and asked me whether I liked music, adding, "You are too young to play yourself." I felt rather piqued at this, and told him I could both sing and play. He then asked me to sing, and I sang as well as I could the Scotch song, "Ye Banks and Braes." When I finished, he said it was the prettiest English air he had ever heard. I replied that it was a Scottish ballad, not English, and he remarked he thought it too pretty to be English. Their music is vile, the worst in the world. He then inquired if I knew any French songs, and among others, Viva Henri IV. I said I did not. He began to hum the air, became abstracted, and, leaving his seat, marched around the room, keeping time to the song he was singing. When he had done, he asked me what I thought of it. I told him I didn't like it at all, for I could not make out the air. In fact, Napoleon's voice was most unmusical, nor do I think he had any ear for music. For neither on this occasion nor in any of his subsequent attempts at singing could I ever discover what tune it was he was executing. He was nevertheless a good judge of music, if any Englishwoman may say so, after his sweeping denunciation of our claims to that science, probably from having constantly listened to the best performance. He expressed a great dislike to French music, which he said was almost as bad as the English, and that the Italians were the only people who could produce an opera. A lady, a friend of ours who frequently visited us at the Briars, was extremely fond of Italian singing, which she loved indeed, not wisely but too well, for her own attempts in the bravura style were the most absurd burlesque imaginable. Napoleon, however, constantly asked her to sing and even listen with great politeness. But when she was gone, he often desired me to imitate her singing, which I did as nearly as I could, and it seemed to amuse him. He used to shut his eyes and pretend he thought it was Mrs. Blank, our departed friend, and then pay me gravely the same compliments he would have done to her. The emperor retired for the night shortly after my little attempt to amuse him, and thus terminated his first day at the Briars. Chapter 4. The spicy myrtle with unwithering leaf shines there and flourishes, the golden boast of Portugal and West India. There the ruddier orange and the paler lime peep through their polished foliage. Cowper. Napoleon's habits during his stay at the Briars. Miss Legge. Her terror of the emperor. Napoleon attacked by a cow. The room occupied by him. His simple mode of living. Caricature of a Frenchman. My indignation at being quizzed about countless causes, son. It is not in my power to give a detailed account of the events of each day the emperor spent with us. I shall never cease regretting that I did not keep a journal of all that occurred, but I was too young and too thoughtless to see the advantage of doing so. Besides, I trusted to a memory naturally most retentive, thinking it would enable me at any time to recall the minutest incident concerning Napoleon. At this I have deceived myself. My life has been a checkered and a melancholy one, and many of its incidents have been of a nature to absorb the mind and abstract the attention from everything but the consideration of present misery. This, continued for a length of time, has erased things from my recollection which I thought I could not have forgotten, but of which I now retain nothing but the consciousness that they took place, and the regret that I am unable to record them. Many of the circumstances I am about to relate, however, I did write down shortly after they occurred, and the others have been kept fresh in my memory by being repeated to friends, so that the reader of my little volume may depend on the absolute truth and fidelity of my narrative, a consideration, indeed, to which I have thought it right to sacrifice many others. I do not then profess to give a journal of what Napoleon daily said and did at the Briars, but the occurrences related I have inserted as nearly as possible in the order in which they took place. The emperor's habits during the time he stayed with us were very simple and regular. His usual hour for getting up was 8, and he seldom took anything but a cup of coffee until 1. When he breakfasted, or rather lunched, he dined at 9 and retired about 11 to his own rooms. His manner was so unaffectedly kind and amiable that in a few days I felt perfectly at ease in his society, and looked upon him more as a companion of my own age than as the mighty warrior at whose name the world grew pale. His spirits were very good, and he was at times almost boyish in his love of mirth and glee, not unmixed sometimes with a tinge of malice. Shortly after his arrival, a little girl, Miss Legge, the daughter of a friend, came to visit us at the Briars. The poor child had heard such terrific stories of Bonaparte that when I told her he was coming up the lawn, she clung to me in an agony of terror. Forgetting my own former fears, I was cruel enough to run out and tell Napoleon of the child's fright. begging him to come into the house. He walked up to her and, brushing up his hair with his hand, shook his head, making horrible faces and giving a sort of savage howl. The little girl screamed so violently that Mama was afraid she would go into hysterics and took her out of the room. Napoleon laughed a good deal at the idea of his being such a bugbear and would hardly believe me when I told him that I had stood in the same dismay of him. When I made this confession, he tried to frighten me, as he had poor little Miss Slag, by brushing up his hair, distorting his features, but he looked more grotesque and horrible, and I only laughed at him. He then, as a last resource, tried the howl, but was equally unsuccessful and seemed, I thought, a little provoked that he could not frighten me. He said the howl was Cossack, and it certainly was barbarous enough for anything.